Welcome back in. It's the Brady Farkas Show right here on WDEV, AM and FM, and WDEVradio.com. Continuing to break down the Patriots re-signing Cam Newton to a one-year deal worth up to $14 million. Joining us now is Patriots insider over at NESN. It's Zack Cox. Zack, man, it's been a while since we've spoken. How are you?
I'm great, Brady. Thanks for having me. Yeah, good to chat with you again.
Well, appreciate you being with me. Your reaction to the Pats re-signing Cam is what?
Not particularly surprised, honestly. I think if you asked me right when the season ended, right after Week 17, if Cam Newton was going to be back for a second year with the Patriots, I would have said no. I would have said that's extremely unlikely. But over the course of the last whatever it is, 2 months or so, it's the possibility has sort of increased in my mind to the point where in about mid-February, it seems like this was almost the most likely outcome. I don't think this was the most desirable outcome. I think the Patriots they probably would have preferred to have signed another quarterback or added another quarterback who is not Cam Newton. But just looking at the landscape right now, based on who is available and who is currently available, kind of the non-Jimmy Garoppolo division, where if you're going to get Jimmy Garoppolo, it probably wouldn't be for another couple months. It's really dangerous to go into free agency with no quarterback on your roster or with Jarrett Stidham and Jake Dolegala as your two quarterbacks. So I think the Patriots were smart to make some sort of deal and some sort of signing before free agency just to give them some sort of stability at that position. And if it was Cam or one of these other free agents, I think Cam is probably their best bet out of that group, honestly.
Is Cam appealing to free agents, specifically free agent wide receivers and tight ends?
I think he is. I mean, I don't think maybe you don't have guys sitting around the NFL anymore saying, man, I really want to play with Cam Newton. But I do think he still has some gravitas in the NFL. He still has some clout just because he was a former MVP, as former first overall draft pick, made it to a Super Bowl, has been a very popular and exciting player for a long time. Now, even though that really didn't translate on the field all that much in 2020, I still think that he is a bigger draw in that regard than maybe a Ryan Fitzpatrick or a Marcus Mariota or Jameis Winston or Tyrod Taylor or Andy Dalton or that entire class of quarterbacks that we were talking about, that it was basically picking Cam out of that group. I think that is a valid point, that free agents are going to be more willing and more desirable to come play with Cam Newton than they would have with most of these other free agent QBs that are out there.
I've given Cam the benefit of the doubt for signing late, no offseason, no preseason, getting COVID. I've given him the benefit of the doubt on all of that. Do you, or do you look at those things as excuses?
I think they are valid explanations. I also don't think they are full explanations. I don't think you can put no blame on Cam Newton and say it was all a matter of circumstances, because I do think those circumstances do matter. This is a very complex offense. Cam Newton signed basically 3 months into free agency last year. He had the COVID bout that you mentioned that basically kept him off the practice field for 2 full weeks, just as the team was sort of hitting its stride, even though it should be mentioned that Cam did not play particularly well as a passer in the game before his COVID test, or his positive COVID test, rather. But overall, even with those circumstances, he still did not perform particularly well as a passer. He also didn't show a ton of improvement over the course of the season. It's a little worrisome to me that some of his worst games came in the final month of the season. I mean, he got benched against the Rams in December. He got benched against the Bills in Week 16 before he ended up having probably his best all-around performance of the season against the Jets in Week 17. So I don't think it's a guarantee by any means that even if Cam Newton does have a full offseason, even if the Patriots do improve that wide receiver group and improve that tight end group, that Cam Newton is suddenly going to become a top 12, top 15 quarterback again. I don't think that's a guarantee. I do think he'll be better because I can't imagine the Patriots being worse this coming year than they were in 2020, just with all the cap space they have, with the opt-outs they're getting back, and now with Cam, if he does end up being their Week 1 starter, him having been in the system for basically a year and a half at that point, I think the arrow can really only point up. The question is whether that arrow points up to 8-8 or 9-7, or whether that points up to 10-6 and 11-5 and back in the playoffs. I think that's going to be the big question.
Zack Cox, Pat's Insider at NESN with us here on the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV, AM and FM at WDEVradio.com. I've said all along, I thought bridge quarterback, and I liked Cam all along, and drafting a quarterback was the right answer for this team. Do you think that they draft somebody first round, trade back into the first round? Are they taking a quarterback high?
I would, if I were them. I know it's a little tough to predict this far out just because so many teams that do need quarterbacks haven't gotten them yet. We still have the whole free agency to go through. So it'll be a little interesting to see how that whole board shakes out. But I think it would be in their best interest to trade into the top 10, into the low top 10, maybe the 7, 8, 9 range, to get someone like Trey Lance or someone like Justin Fields, if either of them falls into that range. Because Cam Newton, even if he plays well, he's only on a 1-year contract. He's going to be 32 this season. He's not a long-term answer for the Patriots. And at this point, we haven't seen anything to suggest that Jarrett Stidham is a long-term answer for the Patriots either. So if they don't get a rookie young quarterback, they're going to be right back in the same situation next year. And also, the Patriots rarely pick this high. This is the first time they've had their own pick in the top 20 in forever, over a decade, I believe. So they're not in this position to even be trading up into the top 10 all that often without having to give up an absurd amount of draft capital. So I think as long as the situation presents themselves, and as long as, of course, they feel that one of these top prospects is worthwhile, I do think it would be smart for them to draft a quarterback in the first round, whether that's Trey Lance, whether that's Justin Fields, or whether that's even Mac Jones, who I personally don't really feel is worth a top half of the first round draft pick. But again, we still have a while to go before the draft actually happens.
What do you think of my idea? Pat's home opener. I've got it pegged as week 2. I guess it could be week 3, but Sunday Night Football, Bucks come into Foxborough, home opener, Tom Brady against Cam in the Pats home opener. What do you think? Or is that too early on the NFL schedule?
See, I like the idea of putting those big time games early in the year, because especially if this Patriots season falls apart and the Pats are, I don't know, 6-5 or 6-8 or whatever it is, if they're just like a scuffling team that doesn't really look like a contender, and then Brady comes back, I feel like it doesn't have quite the, obviously it's going to be a huge deal regardless, but it doesn't have quite the buzz about it. But if this is a September game, obviously it can't be week 1 unless the NFL wants to change its protocol and have the Super Bowl winner play on the road. But yeah, I think it's in the NFL's best interest to have this early on while the full Patriots buzz is buzzing, because that's going to be a very interesting scene. I mean, because if they put that late in the year and the Patriots have really struggled for the previous 5, 6, 7 weeks, you could see a lot of Tampa Bay Buccaneers jerseys and a lot of Tom Brady jerseys in that crowd that day. So yeah, that's obviously going to be the probably the marquee matchup in the entire NFL this year.
I agree with you entirely. My only hesitance is I just don't know. You're following it closer than me. Do we think there will be full fans by Patriots home opener next year?
That is a very good point. They're trending in the right direction, certainly. I mean, the fact that all stadiums in Massachusetts, all professional stadiums are going to be having a small portion of fans as soon as next week or 2 weeks. The March 22nd is the sort of start date for that, and then, I mean, fingers crossed, hopefully all the vaccine rollout and everything goes well, and we can get a good amount of fans at these games this year. But that is a good point. They might want to save that for when it's close to guaranteed that they're going to have a full house there at Gillette.
One more note on Cam, a question about it. How do you think he was impacted by a fanless stadium? Because part of me says Cam would have been uplifted by having fans there because he's such an emotional player. And part of me thinks the fans' ability to get on him may have made it worse for him. What do you think?
I think if he performed the way that he did this season, it might have made things worse in the second half of the year, because, I mean, you're on social media a lot. You're in the media a lot. People were not happy with Cam Newton from really like November on last year. And I think you would have heard a lot of boos. You would have heard a lot of negativity from the Patriots fans in there. I mean, Cam Newton is a guy who sort of thrives off the sort of positive energy from the crowd. But if you've got 60,000 of your own fans booing you and telling them to put in Jarrett Stidham, I don't know if that would have helped his confidence much.
I don't know. What is the overall reaction been that you've seen so far from Pats fans today?
It's been pretty negative, honestly. I think people aren't particularly excited about this move, and I understand that. I don't really blame them, just based on what we saw from this team over the previous season, just with the struggles that Cam Newton did have as a passer. Again, I do see the argument for bringing Cam back, especially since the Patriots have so much money to invest in those positions that were really sort of bringing down the offense last year. The fact that he was throwing to a tight end group that finished dead last in the NFL in receptions for the second straight season. The fact that his best receiver by a mile and a half was Jacoby Myers, who was an undrafted free agent the year before. It's tough for a quarterback, any quarterback, to succeed in that setting. I mean, we saw it with Tom Brady, even in 2019. Tom Brady had one of his worst statistical seasons in his final year with the Patriots. And then he went to Tampa Bay and he had stronger weapons and everything sort of changed. And obviously he went on and won the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that Cam Newton is Tom Brady and he's going to bounce back the way Tom Brady did, but I do think putting better pieces around Cam Newton and giving him more time to learn this system and learn this offense, and also giving Josh McDaniels and the other decision makers more time to tailor this offense maybe a little bit more to some of Cam Newton's needs. I have a hard time seeing how the Patriots are going to be worse this year. Now, I also get that the ceiling might be capped a little bit with Cam Newton in there. Maybe they would have had a higher ceiling if they went out and got somebody else. But again, just based on the options available at this point, I can't see much of I can't see too many better options at the moment. I'll say that.
I'll get you out of here on this quickly. If Cam Newton was a jerk, would he still be there? Like, how much of this is just he's a nice guy and they like having him around and he works hard? Like, the intangibles seem to have worked in his favor here.
Oh, I would say so. Yeah. I mean, based on everybody that we've talked to over the last year, really, you haven't heard a bad word about Cam Newton from a team perspective, from a locker room perspective, from a film room perspective. All of his teammates seem to love him. All of the coaches seem to love him. His work ethic, obviously, he had a really good attitude and a really good demeanor through a lot of those struggles last year. Yeah, I certainly think that helped. I mean, if he was struggling last year, and Bill Belichick and the rest of the coaching staff were just noticing that he was having bad study habits or not taking accountability or anything like that, then I definitely think the chances of him coming back would have been significantly lower. So yeah, I definitely think the off-field intangible aspect definitely worked in his favor.
Zack Cox, Pats insider at NESN. Give him a follow on Twitter at Zack Cox NESN. Zack, we appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you again at some point down the road.
Hey, Brady, thanks a lot.